I want to talk about something good. I want to be positive. Cayman.
Let's be positive for once.
I want to talk about The Legend of Zelda. We're less right now as of recording. We're 10 days away from The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Friend of the show, Nick, who might still be in the chat. I'm not sure. I saw him post in there earlier. Messaged me last week on Instagram, which you can too, Spotlight GameSpot on Instagram, with a topic suggestion, an idea that I loved. I thought, Nick, or I said, Nick, this is a great topic. We're doing it. We want to rank the Zelda games leading into Tears of the Kingdom coming out May 12th on the Nintendo Switch. However, I want to do it a little differently. Instead of just saying what's number 1, what's number 19, because we're talking about 19 games today. I have put together, I've seen, friend of the show, Evan Brando, used to do this all the time, not on stream, just he would put these lists together and post them, and the internet would go ablaze. Doing a little tiers ranking of the Zelda franchise. We're going to call this the tiers, Tiers of the Kingdom. What do you think about that, Cayman? What do you think about that?
You know what? Look at you go.
It's pretty good, right?
Look at you go, dude. That's great. I'm proud of you.
Pretty good. Hey, thanks. So let me make this just a tiny bit smaller, actually, so we can see. Can you actually see these games, though? How about... Is this better? I mean, this fucking ads. This website is trash, but we're going to make it work, Cayman.
Let's make it work.
So here's what I think we should do. I think so. We have S, A, B, C, and D tiers, and then the haven't played tiers, or the tier. So what I want to go through or do first is go through and identify the games that we have not played. If one of us has played it, we're going to rank it. If both of us haven't played it, we're not going to, unless y'all in the chat have and you want to put it in a tier. We can turn that over to you. So I'm going to start by saying I have not played Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, Triforce Heroes, the original Four Swords. I played Four Swords Adventures and Oracle of Ages and Seasons. So I've played all the other Zelda games. Are there any on this list that you have not played?
Yes, I'm trying to remember which one it was. I've not played Minish Cap, but I know you have.
But I have. I'm actually currently playing it.
The only one on your haven't played that I have played is Oracle of Seasons.
Okay, so let's take Oracle of Seasons out. So these other 5 we have not played, so we will not rank them. But if you are in the chat and you have played them, feel free to let us know what tier you think they should go in, and we'll honor your truth. Guilty Runner Smoker in the chat. Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer, featuring The Legend of Zelda. Is that on the list? It's the only one I've played. So it's not technically on the list. However, that fucking Link's crossbow training on the Wii... Fucking I do want to do a little honorable mentions, but we're only ranking the mainline Zelda games. But I mean, we all know that's S tier already. Crypt of the Necrodancer, The Legend of Zelda is S tier. So top of the list. So Cayman,
yes.
What do you say we go chronologically and start placing them from the beginning to now?
Okay.
So if we're going chronologically, the first game ever released in the franchise was The Legend of Zelda on the NES. What do you think about that game?
So I'm like really torn. I ended up playing this much later in life, so I didn't have like the initial experience of like playing this game. I actually think I played it on the Wii Shop. That's how long it was.
Sure.
And it didn't click with me. I gave it a solid C.
I was putting it up here just so like it could be visible away from the group, but I agree. I think this is a C tier game. And I think it's one of those things, if we were, if we played this when it very first came out, maybe we would have that like nostalgia driving it.
Exactly.
But it's one of those games that it doesn't quite hold up in the modern era unless you have that nostalgia. So I agree. Let's put that strongly in the C tier. Also, John in the chat, ads are S tier. I know I adjusted the screen a little bit to get the fucking, I don't even remember what it was, but you didn't pay to be on this podcast, so we're not featuring your shit. Terry, C feels right. Thank you, Terry. Next up would be Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Again, just putting it up here for now, and we can place it where we feel makes sense. But you've played Zelda 2, right?
It sucks.
It's not great, right? I feel like
It's
that
not.
maybe is D tier.
This is very much a D tier game. I like someone out there is gonna be like, "That's just a lie." No, I'm not. The game's not good.
It's not good. It's not great. There it
So
is. John already on our side. D in the
I
chat.
know.
Thank you, John.
Sometimes the truth hurts.
Sometimes the truth hurts, or sometimes the truth feels so good.
Mm.
Sweet Skeet D def. Thank you.
Mm.
I love it when we're all aligned. It makes me feel good. Next up would be The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo.
That shit is S tier, baby. That was my first Legend of Zelda game. That is just a great fucking game.
It's a really good video game. I personally I think would put it in the A tier, but
Okay.
I understand.
I mean, I'm content with that going into. Look, I'm content with deferring. I feel like if like for me, it is definitely nostalgia. So
No, I get that. Let's do this. Let's put it in A for now, but if the chat, if I get multiple S's from the chat, it's going up to S tier. How about that?
okay,
Compromise.
compromise.
Next up, Four Swords on Game Boy Advance. So this is the first one where neither of us have played this.
Mhm.
So let us know in the chat if you've played this, where you think this goes, because we've not played it. So we're not going to sit here and make it a fucking S tier when we've not played it. So that brings us to Link's Awakening. There's the Game Boy original release and then the Switch remake. I've played both, and I feel like I would start the bidding for Link's Awakening at C tier.
What?
No, I'm saying B tier. But
Okay, because I'm definitely going. I have it on my list as an A tier.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the original, but man, the remake was
The Switch remake is really lovely.
so good. Just a charming game.
Yeah.
But
I
I
agree.
once again, I will defer. I'm content with your reasoning. If you were to put it in C, I would have pitched a fucking fit though.
Classic. I feel like that's one of those games. If you've not played this on Switch and if you've not fucked around much with like the old school Zelda the top down feel, the top down kind of like screen to screen feel of a Zelda game, it does a really good job of putting it in like the modern era. So definitely, yeah, check that out. If you've not played it. After that came what some people in the chat have already messaged me to say should be S tier, the best Zelda game ever made. I don't share that opinion, but I do think it's a fucking great game, and that's the Ocarina of Time.
That's an S tier game, baby.
You think S tier?
That's an S tier game.
I personally would say A tier. However, one of the most influential games in the history of video games to like made the open world game kind of what it is in a lot of ways. The adventure, what it is in a lot of ways. So I will agree S tier for Ocarina, even though my personal list has it as a high A. John already in the chat, S tier for Ocarina, and Nick, he hasn't said it, but I know he's thinking S tier for Ocarina. So let's have the first S tier of the night go to The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Terry hasn't played Ocarina. If you have a 3DS, the 3DS port is really good.
It is incredibly good.
It's really good. And also, if you don't have a 3DS, the Switch port, dog shit. In the Nintendo Online. However, if you have that little Nintendo 64 controller, feels a lot better.
It's so sad though, because the 3DS port is like why didn't you just port that over? That's a wonderful port.
I agree. Another really good 3DS port, Majora's Mask, which I am also saying S tier. Unequivocal S tier. Now, what I want to do as well, once we have a few in each of the like once this is filled out, I do want to within the tiers rank them. So we're going to get there. But Majora's Mask, I think it's my second favorite of the Zelda games. I'm currently playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on the 3DS, but once I'm done with that, I'm gonna replay Majora's Mask on the 3DS because it's such a good, fucking
also incredible port.
It's really good port. The first time I ever played that game actually was an emulator on a Mac in like 2011 ish. That was a pretty good port too. I played it with an Xbox 360 controller. That was weird though. Next up, Oracle of Seasons, so you have played this one. I have not. So where do you think? So this one was on the DS, is that
Mhm.
right? Or okay,
Mhm.
or no. This would have been Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, I can't remember all my handhelds at this point.
Yeah.
Especially all the fucking Zelda games.
Okay.
I from what I remember, I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was anything really too great. I put it a solid B.
Solid B. Okay.
Solid B. Like
Okay.
it's like there's so many really good Zelda games, and this one's a good Zelda game. It's just like when you compare it to some of the others that are about to pop up, I feel like it just gets outshined.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah, it's a game now that I'm hoping that they bring both of the Oracle games to the Switch because that's how I'm playing Minish Cap right now is on the Switch,
Mhm.
the Game Boy Advance eShop, whatever the fuck it's called. And that feels great. But we're going to get to that in a minute, but um next up, I mean, come on. What might end up being the best game on this entire list? The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. S tier, easy.
Mhm.
What do you think though?
I have it on as an A on
Okay.
mine, so I'll give it to you.
Well, I took your Link to the Past S tier down to the A. If you want to take Wind Waker down to the A, I'm gonna fight you on it, but you have that
I'm
power.
gonna leave. I'm gonna let Sweet Skeet take this one because I'm gonna break some hearts soon enough.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I know what you're gonna do, and it's gonna be great. Next up, so alongside Wind Waker was a little game called The Four Swords Adventures on the GameCube. Which did you play this one, Cayman?
I did, yeah.
I did too, and I thought this game was pretty lovely at the time. I've not
Mhm.
revisited it since I was, I don't know, 12.
Yeah, I have the same feelings I do with the Oracle of Seasons. A lot of like the DS Game Boy Advance ones, I'm just like they're lovely, they're charming, but like they just didn't really hit as hard for me as like the console ones for some reason.
Yeah.
So like for me, I have it on my list as a B.
Okay. I would agree with B, I think.
Mm,
I think just because of the amount of Zelda games, like you could maybe make a case for C tier, but the interesting thing about the Four Swords Adventures was it felt like a handheld Zelda game on a console, which was cool. Like
mm,
it felt like the first time we got at the time what felt like a triple A kind of game, but had that like handheld feel to it still, even though it was on the GameCube. So yeah, I remember really liking that one. So we're gonna put that in the B tier for now. After that, as I've mentioned a couple times now, the game that I'm currently playing, The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. I'm about halfway through this game, so it's one of those games where there's like 4 different dungeons essentially that are like elemental, and I've done 2 of them. So I assume that means I'm about halfway through the game, and I'm having a really lovely time. It's really simple. It's really easy. Like you can tell this is if you know what you're doing, this is probably a game you can beat in like 4 or 5 hours, I would guess. I'm having a good time. I feel like this is probably high C, low B from where I
mhm.
am now. Um, so since I'm not finished it, I'm gonna start at C. But if anyone in the chat has played Minish Cap and has like knows that it ends up being like incredible or whatever, let me know. Something that this game does cool that I've not seen in a Zelda game before, because there's always like the thing, right? Whatever it is, Twilight Princess, you're the wolf. Wind Waker, you're on the ocean. Minish Cap, you can get really small, like an ant.
Mhm.
Which is
Yeah.
there's some cool like puzzling and some cool exploration stuff that they're doing. I've just not gotten a lot of it yet, and I feel like as I get more of this, of being able to use this kind of, uh, I guess, is that maybe that's the Minish Cap? I don't know. I haven't. It's not been clear yet what the Minish Cap is to me, but it's fun. So that might end up locking it into the B tier. But right now, I'm going to start at C. But like I said, let me know in the chat if you have some strong opinions. Otherwise, next up, I think this might be a controversial one.
Mm.
Came in. Released after the Minish Cap was The Legend of Zelda: The Twilight Princess.
Mhm.
Where does this fall for you?
So Twilight Princess for me is a solid B.
Okay.
Solid B.
For me, it's a pretty solid C. It's like a high C. So
Mm.
I think B. So friend of the show Terry, who I think is still in the chat right now, wrote in to Instagram saying this is S tier for him. And the Twilight Princess defenders are out there, and I get it. It just didn't work for me. And it's a game that I really hope comes back with a port on Switch, because I want to play it again and experience it again, because I feel like this is a game that might work more for me later in life. Like it might vibe with it more now, but I feel like B is maybe the move here. What was your experience with Twilight Princess? Did you really fuck with it at the time?
Oh yeah, no. That was like one of the first games I had on the Wii,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it for what it was worth. I think that the game had a lot of flaws,
Okay.
but I think ultimately though it was still enjoyable, and I think it was a really interesting change of pace from like what we had been getting. Because we got a lot of like smaller titles, I think, in between Wind and Waker. And it was like the first time that we have like a more quote unquote realistic looking Zelda, which I thought was cool. It didn't really do because we had Wind Waker did like cartoony, and then we
Hmm.
had we've got Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and then we that are like, oh, we're gonna be like dark and edgy, and I don't know. I think it's a nice time capsule for like what video games kind of were at the time.
Sure.
Of like let's try to be a little bit more dark and brooding.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and it was so interesting because next up on the list is Skyward or no, well, there's a couple more that came out before Skyward Sword, but we haven't played them. But yeah, the Twilight Princess with that dark, and then like it was the same graphical style, but they tried to just like make it not dark for Skyward Sword, and it just like
yeah.
weirdly kind of there's a lot of
This
kind of dissonance
this is gonna
there.
be the hard. This is gonna be the heartbreaker of the of the ones when I say that Skyward Sword is a solid D.
I would say it's a C for me. Like so this was my experience with Skyward Sword. Got it on the Switch when it first came out, played it for a little bit, and just like hit a wall. And I was like, this just is not fun. The flying is fucking wonky, and the Wii Motion Plus controller, like, sure, it makes like the sword feel better, but I feel like Zelda never really nailed the motion controller that it was trying to sell in
See,
the
I felt like it worked much better with Twilight Princess. Like I felt like
really.
Twilight Princess worked better. Skyward Sword, I feel like kind of did away with some of the gimmicky aspects of it, but like that is was what I enjoyed the most about
Well,
Twilight
yeah, because
Princess.
with Twilight Princess, the gimmicky nature of it, because it couldn't be as accurate as they wanted it to be, they made it a little more arcadey, which was more fun. With Skyward Sword, with you had to have Wii Motion Plus to play it, so like you had to sometimes do like diagonal chops, and
Yeah,
it
not
was like
fun.
yeah, it just wasn't very fun. But then years and years later,
Mhm.
years and years, I went back and I was like, you know what? I never played Skyward Sword to the end. I want to try it again. And I played it again and I realized there was a very quick tutorial about how to fly that I just must not have read when I first played it. So I realized I had never been flying correctly the first time I played it, and it was all of a sudden so easy to traverse in that game. And I ended up liking it a lot more the second time.
Interesting.
That being said, I do still think it's one of the weaker
Mhm.
one of the weaker mainline Zelda games for sure. So I would be willing to happily put it at the top of the C tier because I think it's a line straddler. Or sorry, the bottom of the C tier because I think it's a line straddler between
Mhm.
probably
Sure.
C and D. So does that make sense? Does
That
that
works
do
for
you
me.
align that? Okay.
That works for me. I'll take
Cool.
it.
Nick in the chat, I want to give it another try on Switch using the Amiibo for fast travel. I'll wait for it to be cheap and see how Skyward is. I actually own it physically if you want to borrow it, Nick. I found it on sale one time from Best Buy for like 25 bucks, weirdly. So I picked it up then. So next time I see it, if you want to borrow it, I'll lend it to you. Next up, and actually, I do want to quickly circle back. Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass, two games that neither of us have played. So if either of you have, or if any of you in the chat have played that one, and you feel like you know where it belongs in this tier list, let us know. We'll put it there, but we've not played them, so we're gonna skip those. And then, so next up is A Link Between Worlds on the
Mm.
3DS. You played this one? What did you think of it?
I think it's a good A.
A good A.
I
Okay.
think Link Between Worlds is a really solid handheld Zelda game.
Cool. Yeah, for me, in my original workings of this list, I had this in a B tier, but I think I agree with you. I think I look back on it and I think B was unfair. I think similar to Majora's Mask, I feel like this is one of those games where it really nailed the different thing. Where
Mhm.
in this one, Zelda or Link being able to go 2D and like get
Such
on
a
the
cool
walls,
mechanic. Oh,
really
such a
cool
cool
mechanic
mechanic.
that they fucking nailed.
Yeah.
And the dungeons are really fun in that game. And because also that game came out a little bit before Breath of the Wild, which we'll talk about in a minute, that didn't really have the like the temple vibe that most Zelda games do. And so after playing Skyward Sword, or sorry, Breath of the Wild, going back to A Link Between Worlds was nice to have that like kind of more traditional Zelda experience. So yeah, I would agree, A tier for A Link Between Worlds. So that brings us to the final game that has been released, and that is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Cayman, this is
Mhm.
one of those games where I think 95% of the internet would agree with me that this is an S tier game, but I want to
Mhm.
hear what you think.
Okay,
What tier
so
you think Breath of the Wild deserves.
I'm gonna give it a fair shake. I D was too low. I think C is, no, I'm kidding. No, I look, watching Sid play through it again and her relaying like what she really likes about the game and things that she really dislikes about the game. It's interesting because we have like diametrically opposed um opinions on the things that we like and dislike. And but ultimately she was just like, I don't know if I can actually beat this game, like beat it. She was
Yeah.
like, I don't know if I can. She was like, I'm kind of like, she's getting in like an Elden Ring headspace that like I had,
Yeah.
where she's like, I'm gonna play it out of spite at this point. But like, she's like, it's just something about it. I think listening to her talk about it and kind of my own opinions and just knowing the general discussion, I think an A is when I'm looking at Zelda games, I think an A is a very respectable place for this game to be placed.
Sure. Yeah. So here's my kind of thought on it. I feel like Nick in the chat makes a good point. Every game after it copied it, Breath of the Wild is definitely an S tier. There is that like Breath of the Wild kind of reached that status that like Dark Souls did, where it kind of did so much kind of differently in the open world genre, or in whatever genre, like with Dark Souls, not necessarily open world, but to where it kind of became like a verb to describe something, like it's Breath of the Wild like. And or this game is very Breath of the Wild. And so there's like an iconic status to it that I think is worth respecting.
Mhm.
But I
You
do
know,
think that it is fundamentally a very different game than every game on this list.
mhm,
We kind of just mentioned it briefly in that it's like the first game to really not follow a temple structure, in that it had the 120 shrines that were just like mini puzzles, which were cool, but it is something that I really did miss in this game. And I go back and I went earlier this year and played it for about 20 more hours. I like started over with the intent of finishing it again, but I eventually dropped off because I did pretty much 100% it the first time I played it. And
I
there is a
think
magic to it, but
you know,
yeah, it's missing something.
I think the big thing though is I think the shrines are its biggest problem. That
Sure.
you are because they do it in Elden Ring, and I don't think anyone's really figured out how to do it the right way yet. Where they go, okay, we're gonna start you off in an area that it's gonna be tough, but you can work through it. And then you're going to have the full map to explore and you can do it on whatever you want to do. But you're still roped into, you have to do the shrines if you want to go to some of those places. And some of those places are much more difficult than other places. Same thing with Elden Ring. Like there's parts of that map that like you just don't need to go to. You're going to get
Sure.
your teeth kicked in.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest issue with Breath of the Wild. And that was like one of the one things that like Sid and I both synced up on was like, you are forced to do shrines. You don't have an option. You have to. If you want to progress in the game, you have to. If you want to get the Master Sword, there's no question. And like you pretty much have to have it to beat Ganon unless you're real fucking good.
Sure.
It's like you kind of have to. So like for me, I'm like, yeah, I get it. And like 120 of those motherfuckers, and some of them are very easy. Some of them are also very difficult.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of burnout there.
There could definitely be burnout there for sure.
But and I think that's the thing. You made a good point though that Breath of the Wild is one of those games that that people started using the term like, oh, this game is Breath of the Wild like or Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild esque, whatever. You know, there's a game that not many people actually talk that much about that did the same thing, Patrick. The
What
game
is
is
it?
called Bulletstorm.
God damn it.
So many people after that game came out are like, any game, honestly, even Breath of the Wild when it came out was like, this game's kind of like Bulletstorm. I was like, I don't really know if I agree, but sure. Still haven't
Sure.
played it, have you, Patrick?
No, I haven't.
You fucking
And I don't
loser.
think I ever will.
You suck.
And I don't think I ever will.
It's on it's on fucking PlayStation Plus right now.
Cayman actually means Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts is very Bulletstorm. And Bulletstorm is very Kingdom Hearts. It's all connected. So here's my thing. I think I'll take A. I'll take A for Breath of the Wild. I do still think it deserves to be S tier just for kind of how it, for a game that has 19 mainline entries, pretty impressive for it to come out and completely change the formula and still be so successful and what a lot of people consider the best game ever made.
Mm-hmm.
But I think kind of like what we said, like it is the most different on this list. So, and that with that comes different tastes. And so I'll settle with you and say this is A tier. So now what I want,
this, Patrick, I'll tell you this.
Tell me.
When we rank them, I'll make sure that it's the number one in the A tier.
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll see. So obviously we're going to skip the haven't played because no one in chat ever chimed in. So it seems like no one has ever played any of those 5 games. So we're just going to keep them there. D, stuck with the Adventure of Link Zelda 2 because there's no other game to compare it to. So C tier, we got Minish Cap, the original The Legend of Zelda, and The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I actually feel like this, the only thing I would maybe consider is switching Skyward Sword and 1. Mm-hmm. Oh, can I not do that? There we go. What do you think?
I think that's a solid C tier, yeah.
Okay. And then so B tier, we got Link's Awakening, Oracle of Seasons, The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords, and Twilight Princess.
Honestly, I think that could remain in that exact order and be just fine. Because I still think Link's Awakening needs to be an A tier, but since it's not,
I'm happy with Link's Awakening being top of the B tier. I do think that I would maybe switch these two, and put Twilight above 4 Swords because it has that like more full feeling to it, and that little wolf is just so cute. A tier, Breath of the Wild, A Link to the Past, and A Link Between Worlds. I think it's fair to have Breath of the Wild number 1 in the A tier. What do you think? Do you think these are right where they are? Or do you think you flip them?
No, I think they're perfect. Yeah.
Cool. I dig it. And then, so that brings us to S tier, Ocarina, Majora's Mask, and Wind Waker. My personal ranking would go Wind Waker, Majora, Ocarina. What would yours be?
Mine would be Majora, Ocarina, Wind Waker. So
that puts, Majora was highest for both of us.
I could say if we're coming down to that point, I would say Ocarina being 3 in the S tier is totally okay too.
I'm fine with keeping it at 2. That's okay.
Majora is just the best to me. Majora is the best Zelda game. Yeah, it is such an interesting thing.
I've gotten enough opportunity to force feed my love for Wind Waker into lists on this podcast before, so I will let Ocarina have the leg up this time. So there you have it, folks. We got from top to bottom, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, The Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild, A Link to the Past, A Link Between Worlds, Link's Awakening, Oracle of Seasons, Twilight Princess, The Four Swords Adventures, The Minish Cap, Skyward Sword, The Legend of Zelda, and Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, not ranking Spirit Tracks, Phantom Hourglass, Triforce Heroes, Four Swords, and Oracle of Ages.
What, John? I'm just gonna say this right now. No, we're not gonna include Wand of Gamelon on anything.
The fuck is that?
Oh no, we're not gonna talk about that.
Not gonna include that. Is this a D's nuts joke?
No, it's not. However, we did miss one game that needs to go into the tier D, and it's called These Nuts.
Sure, there you go.
Okay, Wand of Gamelon would be like, if there's, can we go lower than D? Is there further tier down? It is without a doubt one of the worst fucking things you've ever seen.
Just looking at the images online, this looks fucking insane. What is this? Is this a Nintendo released game?
Yeah, it was on the CDR, I think. John might be able to help me out. It didn't come out on a Nintendo console. It was, I think it was a CDR game. It was.
Fucking weird.
It's really bad.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch some videos about that. So here's my final question to close out the show.
Sure.
So we have our tiers, our tiers of the kingdom for The Legend of Zelda. If you were to guess today, right now, 10 days ahead of release, where do you think The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom ranks on this list?
I'm gonna say.
Do you think it can make an S tier?
I don't think so. I think it's gonna be an A, and I think it's gonna be behind Breath of the Wild.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like it's got big shoes to fill, and I think it could be better than Breath of the Wild. But it's too early to tell, I think, with all these new mechanics. But I will be shocked if it is below A tier. I will be pretty shocked.
No, yeah. I don't see that. I will say the one thing is, I think we've had this conversation where we were like, are they going to remove the shrines? The game seems much bigger, and shrines I don't think seem like it's going to be something that fits in this type of world. That might actually, in my head, elevate it above Breath of the Wild. But I do think that that's a tough one.
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to wait and find out. But I did want to share with the folks at home, at least in the chat. If you're listening, you're not going to see this, but Terry and I were kind of bonding in the fact that we both got this little sweet thing.
Oh, that's beautiful, dude.
So this is the Tears of the Kingdom OLED special edition. This is for Rose, quote unquote. And so that's the dock. And
so how many Switches do you now own?
So technically right now, and those are the Joy-Cons, so pretty. Right now, we own 3. However, one for each of us, and then now we have an extra one. So we are finding the extra one a new home.
Good.
So we're not going to just own 3 Switches.
Good.
But
that's sweet of you to find it a new home.
It is, yeah. And I'm excited. I don't know if this person knows that we're giving them the Switch yet, but I hope they are happy. But that's on them. That's not on me. Cayman.
Yes, sir.
We do have one last thing to discuss, and that is a little bit of an update to the games calendar, because there are a few things I did want to mention, but we'll be quick and then we'll get the fuck out of here. Today, as we've said, Redfall and Game Pass. As of release on the 4th, a game called Ravenlock I've never heard of. I meant to delete that, but one I did want to mention on the 8th. Weird West Definitive Edition coming to Game Pass. So that's a game that I know you've been wanting to play. So it's coming to Game Pass. And then also some announcements. Forspoken, if you ever played that, is getting a little bit of DLC called Intanta We Trust, coming May 26th. That's later this month. And then Armored Core 6 got a release date and a gameplay trailer. If you missed that, go check that out. It looks pretty cool. In a different world, we might have reacted to that during the podcast, but other things happened, and I think it was better for it. August 25th is when that game comes out. And then Oxenfree 2 got a release date coming July 12th for Switch, PS4, and 5, Steam, and Netflix. You might notice not on Xbox, originally an Xbox exclusive, not coming to Xbox again. And then also Gran Turismo and Twisted Metal both got trailers, the movie and the shows, respectively. And it's weird. They both look weird, but hey.
I'm actually quite excited for the Twisted Metal show.
Twisted Metal does look campy as fuck, and I'm ready
dig
for that.
Yeah.
Terry in the chat, Lord have mercy, I'm so happy about it. The OLED screen is so beautiful. Truly, if you are ever considering getting a Switch, if you play a lot in handheld mode, the OLED screen it's incredible. It's worth it. But Cayman, any last words before we move on and go home?
No.
Great. You can follow me at Patrick Schwag. You can follow the pod at Spot Games Pod or Spotlight Games Pod on Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. You can follow our sister podcast, Save Trash Cinema, at Save Trash Cinema on all socials. Cayman, where can I find you?
You can find me at the Dumpster Boy on Twitter.
Stinky in that dumpster. Until next week, I love you.
I love you.